Hello and welcome! Part 2 of Breaking News. And we have breaking news. Something was just on the news that I wasn't aware of during the time that I recorded part 1 of today's episode of my little podcast show, which is, of course, me trying to be redonkulous about what's on the news, in hopes that you'll find it interesting, entertaining, and slightly thought-provoking, and occasionally giggle. Today, it turns out, I'm happy to report to those of you who did not know, because then it makes me the person that told you the news. For those of you who did not know, today is National Equal Pay Day for women. Now, I know that I'm probably got what might be at first perceived as a very unpopular opinion in terms that the very first sentence I've got to say about Equal Pay Day today might throw people off track and put women on the defensive. But stick with me, because the story gets better as you follow through. I think that this day, marking this day, making it a holiday, is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Now, don't jump to the conclusion that you probably just jumped to. I think it's nonsense because it's not honoring. It's not actually solving the problem. It's not honoring women. It's just pointing out that there continues to be a problem and that we have to fight the fight. We have to keep fighting the fight. There's a lot of people, especially here in America, that are really in love with the notion of fighting that fight for good causes, for just causes. And in a way, it's very sound logic. But it's also sort of implicitly part of the us versus them ideological division conditioning that keeps us all bickering with each other instead of actually solving the problems. The very fact that there is a equal pay day for women in which people rally and remind each other of the fact, remind the world, remind the whole country at large, that there's a huge wage gap, and that there is. Never mind that there's plenty of we need a word for what rumor mongering is, for rumors, for people who just insist on churning through nonsense, ideologically biased fake news. Because there's the fake news out there that the wage gap is fake news, and that there is no wage gap, and that it's just a bunch of... But it's real. It's really simple. You see it for realsies the first day that you don't work in retail, but that you work on salary. Anybody who most of the people who were really suckered into the notion that the pay wage gap does not exist are usually people who've never worked either have never worked in a situation where you could readily compare your salaries with the women around you in your office because of corporate policies that for privacy reasons protect the disclosure of salary numbers, or you worked in retail and therefore everyone was basically a slave wage at that point, some sort of service industry where you're getting paid less than a living. See, there's all this argument about raising the living wage, too, and it's sort of like the same problem. We're going to develop a, Fight for 15 holiday to try to get the rest of the country to, because, 2 or 3 places give $15 wage now? 4? I don't remember. But it's not the nation. It isn't nationwide. It isn't all 50 states, right? So we're going to have to fight that fight. But who are we fighting? We have to fight our own government to protect the environment? We have to fight our own government to protect our rights? And that's always been the case, even from before Trump, right? So let's not get too carried away in the resistance. And I shall not get too carried away in my own crazy ramblings. And we'll get back to what we left off with. I did want to break with that breaking news and also talk about this one if it opened correctly. I saw this being shared on Facebook. And this is sort of sad. Oh, I didn't really finish my point on the pay-wage gap. Like, let's stop having rallies about the pay-wage gap and let's just start paying everybody in the country one wage. Because if you think about it, if we solve the male-female pay gap, there's still the social class and a racial division pay gap. Why should strawberry pickers get paid any less than service industry restaurant workers? Working in a restaurant is hard, but picking strawberries in a field is sort of like 100 times harder on your body. And there's some breaking news on that I heard on the radio, by the way. And I have no direct links to this, so people will tell me that this is bullshit. But this was on a public radio station that's independent and that I sort of generally appreciate for their unbiased approach to reporting the news. They're just about the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. As the old line from that TV show used to go that people used to quote. And they mentioned that there's... And perhaps John Oliver did a piece on this too, I'm now recalling. So I don't have any news on this, but I'm sure you could Google it, right? But I feel confident enough to share with you my opinion on that reporting, that it's probably true. That there are farmers, and especially since this is California, and I know the agriculture industry personally. There are farmers in Northern California trying to hire non-illegal immigrants by changing their compensation package and taking a big hit to themselves at the profit level, the bottom line, because y'all know that illegal immigrants who work the fields get paid shit wages, right? To the level of being embarrassing because it's essentially slavery. And we should be, as a nation, embarrassed by it because human beings are human beings and they should all get paid. If women deserve equal pay for equal work, then so do all humans. And then at that point, you really have to question, why are there brackets of income that are mind-bogglingly astronomically high, to the point that those rich people hardly do anything besides broad stroke, supposed intellectual leadership type decision making. But they're making so much money, it's obscene, and they could feed the whole nation of hungry people that resides within this country of America 3 times over, but they refuse to. Even though Jesus, their supposed Lord and Savior, tells them to, and the American culture itself is sort of pays a lot of lip service to, never leaving American people suffering. And yet there are. So let's let that mind-blowing thought process settle down for a second, and we get to some other really obviously sad and tragic breaking news, which I don't like to dwell on the negative things, and I'm not one of those people that on Facebook would post the graphic image from war-torn Syria, because that's emotionally challenging and can get borderline emotionally abusive, because it's such a visually dense and impactful and painful and really negative energy, damaging kind of imagery. We all need to own up to that image, those images, and face them in our own time and in our own space and confront them. We all need to do our actual homework on anytime that there's some war-torn nation in pain and suffering, that we're not doing anything about stopping the war. Okay? And that's a fact. Everyone needs to own up to that. But we don't also, simultaneously, the opposite is true. We don't need to get bombarded by it all the time. But I feel that it's also, so this my concession to that, to talk about it on my podcast and not include graphic imagery and not go out of my way to be graphic in the way I describe it, but just talk about the facts. And so it was difficult to wake up to, both on the news, on multiple stations, and on Facebook, kind of a little bit too spammy all over the place, that there's a new wave of really depressing death toll in Syria because of a new round of attacks, and in this case, some sort of poison gas attack. There was just some horrible attack that, was taking all kinds of lives, and this is the kind of thing that, and in the kind of place where no one's even really clear on who's dropping what on which buildings and for why. It's real. Syria is seriously starting to feel like we live inside the novel Catch-22. And if you've never read that, go read it. For crying out loud. You're living in some really harmful ignorance if you've never read that book. And the writers from that era that warned us of the horrors of world war. Because if it isn't obvious to you, it's going to come as a shock for me to say that, the first meme I ever made that I really, really, really just fucking wished would magically, scarily go viral was, brace yourselves, World War III is coming. And if you can't recognize that Syria is a kind of World War III already, then you are being willfully, and by willfully I mean you are choosing to ignore one of the most critical threats to American safety, to security, national security of the United States, and the cause of terrorism, one of the now primary contributing causes to terrorism, besides the corruption and the fact that it's probably being paid for by the same people who pay for everything else and who profiteer on everything else. But it's time to wake people up to that, okay? So there's a massive amount of suffering going on there, and here in America, we're just sort of fretting about this madman that's in office, and we're letting him declare that America's not going to do anything to help, and America is not going to do anything to interfere with Assad. What more proof do you need that it's not necessarily Putin, but that all of these things are connected and tied to that war? Then it's a matter of public record. You don't need to. I mean, unless, again, if the only source of news you watch is Fox News, you might not realize this. But if you pay attention to the news from enough of a diversity of sources, you'll understand that Putin's got a really hard on and supports Assad directly. Therefore, Putin is sort of the reason why Syria is a war-torn Syria and has been for so long, as much as Assad might be, making him complicit, in other words, criminally liable. And that the connections between the Trump campaign and most of his really high-end, top-level staff and the Kremlin, it's not a ruse. I mean, it is a ruse. It's a double whammy. It's both. Because they want us to argue over that instead of do anything about it, which is exactly what's happening, folks. We need to stop arguing with the Trump supporters and start helping them to see the facts about Trump clearly. We need to stop hating those who voted for the man and need to start helping them comprehend what he's doing. Because even if he isn't officially tainted by Russia, he's certainly playing the same game, because he has declared, he has made it U.S. policy as of right this last, 24 hours, 48 hours? This wasn't on the news on Friday, and it's on the news all over the place today, that U.S. is not in the business, in the game, in the action of removing Assad from power. And we seem to be, I think, as a nation, slowly piecing together that there's a pattern there, because he sort of has led his fans towards the sort of normalizing the idea that maybe he could turn, basically, to quote Trump himself, would it be so bad if America and Russia got along? Would it be so bad? No, it'd be good. He sort of made the same sort of apparently plausible, reasonable sounding argument about North Korea. Except that all of those people are really, really, really deeply involved in the profiteering on war, as clearly evidenced by their obsession with war. Now, there's a lot of people here in America that don't really think about ourselves being in a war, because since World War II, no one has shown up en masse with a military force here. And we can pat ourselves on the back about, and be all patriotic and prideful, and that being about how much cleverer we are, how much more virtuous we are, and how we are God's chosen nation. But let me tell you, God's chosen nation is the original mindfuck of the oppressor. You'll put up with a lot of shitty conditions when you believe you are chosen by God and all of it somehow has meaning. All your suffering and the endurance of having to endure being oppressed. But I digress. I came back to check my time on the studio. This is getting insane and out of control. And we cannot stand by as this country, as the people in this country get traumatized and victimized and brutalized this way. Because we are allowing them, those who survive, who magically, because I can't even imagine how the kind of luck it takes. Because have you seen the drone footage, the actual video footage taken by drones of some of the cities in Syria? They look like sets in Hollywood movies. And I don't mean that in the cynical way, oh, it's all fake. You can tell that that's really the city, that it is, and you're really there, because it all looks way more real than a movie set. But the first thing comes to mind, this is wow, this is how the movie sets get it wrong, because this stuff actually looks like it got blown up the way in which we are told it gets blown up, as opposed to special effects and scenic designers kind of just recreating in their artistic minds what that might look like. Having never been to a war-torn place, the two turn out to look slightly different when you do see actual footage. I don't know. What is that a bad distinction to make? I'm not trying to offend designers of war movies. I'm not trying to offend anybody, to be honest. But okay, so that's the big bits of breaking news that I didn't even get to talk about in my first part of the segment that I really needed to get to. And then I was going to do this headline rundown, but I'm freeform. I'm freeform radio. I'm freeform podcasting. Oh, I wanted to give a quick update. I found the mission statement for the Live Free or Die Citizens Count New Hampshire Alliance website. And I actually can now officially say, as a totally unknown public X-list celebrity. No, that makes it sound like I'm talking about porn. I'm not a porn celebrity. So don't, and now that's going to be a thing. People are going to have to chit-chat about it at some point and make fun of me. But as a, ABC, D list, I was trying to give myself a really low rating on the list system of celebritydom. And anyways, as a non-entity in celebrityhood, I can officially endorse this as a future celebrity, as an aspiring celebrity. I can now endorse this website and this organization because I really am engaged by their mission statement, and as long as they're not full of shenanigans and corruption, then I'll have to take them at their word, right? Our mission: Citizens Count. NH's Live Free or Die Alliance is a nonpartisan 501c3 nonprofit organization created to serve New Hampshire citizens by, and then in beautiful bullet point, promoting objective information about issues and candidates, promoting the civil exchange of opinions in a variety of forums, online and in person, connecting citizens with their elected officials. Now that's what I'm talking about. Elected officials have pulled this really awesome trick on America, which is if you come to our rallies and clap for us, then we'll do the right thing for you and fight the good fight for you in government. That's not how government is supposed to work. It isn't how it was laid out to work by the Founding Fathers and by the early engineers of American governance as this country kind of evolved. We're supposed to participate and engage and tell them what we want them to do. Not applaud at their rallies and then go home and hope that they do the right thing as they get lavishly seduced by lobbyists with lots of money. We're supposed to put the pressure on them and hold them accountable to their bullshit and their fake promises. So the scary thing is there are still kudos to the Live Free or Die org. I'm going to come back and check out their content in depth, and I'm going to consider them a valid news source because unless they're lying to me. I didn't read you the second part. Here's what really caught my attention. I looked at this over the break, right? What we do, and I hadn't read it to you yet, and I started going on to my commentary about it. What we do, bullet point, separate fact from opinion, giving you both sides of every story. Now, I like that. I endorse that. I approve of that. I want that, and everyone should think like that a little bit more. Not because I said so, but because if you don't understand both sides of the story, you're just jerking yourself off to ideology. Okay? And try to debunk that. This is what the rest of their bullet points are. We provide objective, unbiased information about candidates and elected officials. Yes. Let the individual voter make up his or her own mind. And also let the collective group share in consensus building around complex issues by helping each other improve and expand our ideas on it with facts. So I'm down with that. They give the citizens a place to share their opinions and engage in respectful discussion about the issues that affect New Hampshire. They put your views on the front of decision makers. Put your views in front of decision makers, building a stronger bridge between officials and the citizens who elected them. And they continue with what nonpartisan means to us. We are committed to remaining balanced and unbiased. We don't take positions on issues, endorse candidates, or stand for or against any elected official. We provide vital tools for citizens to make sure that the full range of positions and opinions are heard. Our website is packed with clear, unbiased information about New Hampshire candidates, elected officials, and over 80 issues, as well as the latest news affecting blah blah civics and civic life in New Hampshire. We make it easy for citizens to share their views on online discussions, weigh in on our Facebook questions, and connect directly with their elected officials. I think that's awesome. This is an important ingredient to the multifaceted way in which government is really supposed to work, and that is missing from how it's actually being conducted today in America. We're supposed to have organizations like that at the grassroots level that can be trusted by the community as an unbiased, unslanted source of fact. And let me tell you, MSNBC is not unbiased. Their bias is against the Republican side. It's just as gentle and as news journalism worthy as possible. They're also, sort of, they play tough on both sides. They play tough on the Democrats. And sometimes they actually are tough on the Democrats. But generally speaking, MSNBC is about countering the hyper-conservatism of Fox with a kind of open-minded progressivism that if maybe only in rhetoric, maybe really in the hearts of many of those journalists, is there to ask the hard questions. Now, as a viewer and a critic of their product line, I really, really don't believe that they ask hard enough questions. In fact, I want to do a show, which I don't know what the legalities are, and I really want to ask an entertainment lawyer, and I'm not going to have an entertainment lawyer until my audience builds big enough to make me sort of become internet famous. So get cracking, my friends. If you already like my shit, share it more. And this is my effort, my grassroots organization. Let's recruit listeners. If you like what I'm doing, and if you've been liking what I post on Facebook, it's time to expand it past just, a social networking thing into an organizing thing. Okay. Everybody needs sources like that, and if they prove to be truly nonpartisan, I'm going to applaud them. Now, I'm generally nonpartisan, but I do have harsh critique for both parties and for third parties. So I have an opinion. I have an opinion on all parties, and I am not unopinionated in terms of that. I have a different function as an entertainment entity than they do. But I applaud them for the stance that they take. So Trump Watch at NRD, is it NRDC? NRDC.org looks pretty interesting and has pretty interesting titles going on. EPA chief blows more hard air about climate change. EPA head Pruitt under investigation for allegedly misleading Senate. Science experts are few and far between in the Trump administration. Trump restores coal program that rips off taxpayers. Now that's an interesting thing, because the ripping off the taxpayers thing is something that seemed obvious to me in what he was presenting and promising, and was not being commented on by either Fox or any of the leftist leaning news or the centrist progressive leaning news. Not that I caught every freaking minute of it, right? I can only watch so much. I need more staff. Trump's EPA refuses to ban pesticide harmful to children. That was March 30th. That's a fact that's easily verifiable. Did they have some legislation on board that could have banned them? Were they asked that question? So this seems like it's going to be an interesting source of stuff to talk about in depth, but we're going to come back to it later. I wanted to hit up that, not here, over here on theweek.com. Now, I'm not getting paid by any of these. These were all randomly, I had no previous knowledge what would come up, right? I mean, you heard part 1 of this episode. So, 95 actual news headlines that we've published about Donald Trump. This is real life. I think it's awesome that they did this, and I'm just going to hit up a few. So this was published on June 16th, 2015. Or no, it was published, I already read that part, right? It was posted a few months ago, and it was a year out from when he announced. So, 1. Campaign paid actors $50 to come to his presidential announcement. Now, Trump fans still claim that that's been debunked, but Trump haters still claim that that hasn't been debunked. Mitt Romney was a frozen jellyfish in his 2012 race. An escaped Mexican drug lord, El Chapo, Donald Trump and escaped Mexican drug lord El Chapo threaten each other on Twitter. Okay, number 11. Sorry, I'm trying to read them and I should just read them all. But Donald Trump says he'd use ISIS to scare the Pope into supporting capitalism. Which this Pope particularly apparently doesn't. Which is funny to me because he got rid of his gold throne, but they're still the wealthiest institution in Rome and probably one of the top 5 wealthiest organizations on the planet, right? So the week has got a fun collection of headlines. Number 18, Donald Trump is quoted as saying, "I love the Muslims." September 20th, 2015, "I love the Muslims." You know, America knows this, that when you call a race with "the" in front of it, you're objectifying them. That means you're trying to be really subtle about your racism. You don't say, "I love the African Americans," or I respect the black people. No. If you're correctly saying those things and appropriately with genuine meaning, you say, "I respect people of color. I respect black people. I respect African American people." Not the Muslims. Not the black folk. Or the black people. You know what I'm saying? Just putting the word "the" in front of it literally, grammatically means that the next word is an object, not a person. Think about that, folks. Oh, this is an interesting one. Number 19. Donald Trump boycotts Fox News, September 3rd, 2015. Well, they weren't super hilarious. Okay, the next one that I had opened up was 23 bizarre, funny, insane Trump headlines. And that turns out to be a law website, the Reeves Law Group, personal injury attorneys. But they happen to, for whatever reason, post this blog post, 23 most bizarre, funny, insane Trump news headlines. Trump didn't just banish a baby, he banished a mother. Trump supporters attack Muslim women with babies, rips off hijabs. Those aren't funny. That's not funny. Donald Trump says he's sorry. Number 4. Trump pretty much admits that he expects servicemen to be rapists. I don't know who published that headline. The picture is on Law News website and the opinion section. Okay. Number 5. Trump's wrong. Mexicans aren't going to rape you. Okay. Number 6. Exclusive. Trump's 3,500 lawsuits unprecedented for a presidential nominee. You notice that there's not much come up about that, except that maybe he settled a couple of big ones. But 3,500 lawsuits against him. Oh, it's because he's a victim. Donald Trump calls Hillary Clinton the devil. I remember that. Trump slams voting rights for felons, wants GOP to court black voters. Trump slams voting rights for felons, wants GOP to court black voters. Donald Trump campaign offers actors $50 to cheer him president. This one's from The Hollywood Reporter. I'm not surprised. That crowd looked bored and confused at best. And I saw that event live, and I was curious and wondering. Okay, well, that's an interesting thing. It's just a lot of group. The Independent. is advertising take a steamboat. I'm not from Canada. That was just a weird. I couldn't pronounce it. Take a steamboat trip down the Mississippi. American Queen Steamboat Company. I'm not being paid to read this. It's just the first thing on their page. Because all I can see is independent news. And then it's this massive advertising. And then it's a WordPress.com ad. Where I think I have a version of my blog. No, I don't. I have an account, but I don't remember the password. And it's been months. So this is one of those pages where I can't even tell where I'm supposed to read. The pictures are huge. They're talking a lot about the Russian spy stuff. Trump hanging over it. The new 1984 film gets a rewrite. They're doing a new 1984 film? Wow. Former Trump advisor passes energy industry documents to Russian spy. I really am curious about the 1984 film because it's amazing that 1984 is being made right now. Fox News politics. Let's move on to that. Oh, as soon as I opened it, it refreshed and disappeared. Exclusive. Paul calls on Rice to testify after reports of unmasking. Asks if she was ordered by Obama. Here's the thing that's stupid about that story. What they make it sound like she knew that it was Trump officials and therefore, by unmasking them, released leaked it into the world. No, she didn't know whose names were being masked and wanted to know, which is totally legal, and that's sort of what the people in those jobs are supposed to do to protect America. Because they weren't spying on Trump directly. They were, and it's quite clear that it was all passive collection. Based on, however trustworthy you consider those people giving testimony, or the media, any media. So Fox News makes it beyond the media bubble. Even Trump country has mixed feelings about budget cuts. That's interesting. They have a little bar of picture with. A little, instead of a story or more advertising, they have a little collection here. The first 100 days, Grassley, Gorsuch is going to be on the Supreme Court by midnight Friday. If that came out before last Friday, they were wrong. Debate over con bill would allow cops to put deadly weapons on drones. Deadly weapons on drones. You know what I heard the other day? And I can't confirm this, but I bet it's true because it's kind of too easy and too obvious that cops in some jurisdictions, are using drones to basically spy on or monitor people leaving the bar with cameras and then follow their cars without having to do patrols. And they just follow their cars and they take pictures of their cars and issue DUIs. Now, the irony is, according to the stories that I've heard, they come and get people and arrest them after they get home. Not when they're on the road, when they could arguably have saved someone's life and prevented an accident, but after they get home, which point, if they didn't get home, they would be responding to that accident and picking up, injured or dead people off the road. So that doesn't seem to make any fucking sense. As a person who, and this is full disclosure, I have 2 DUIs in my record. I'm not proud of it. I'm also not that person anymore. And I will, for the rest of my life, argue very strongly for people to sort of, either be really hardcore about not driving ever at all when they drink by Ubering and hopefully getting robot cars out on the road soon that drive for us safely. But that's a whole scary level because they'll be hackable, right? I'm really going way off topic and I'm running out of time. But anyways, so this whole issue with drones, and now they want to put deadly weapons on it? Fuck no. Now we are way beyond the pale. These are things that Orwell could not have predicted or imagined even though Orwell and those other guys. I'm totally blanking on the name of the author who wrote 1984, and I love 84. And it's not. Is it George Orwell? It is George Orwell. Why am I being such a? Oh, because I haven't slept any at all today, and it's 5 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. That's why. Insomnia, man, it kind of messes with your head. At any rate, anybody who didn't ever believe before that we are being slowly manipulated into living in a police state, wake up, folks. It's really happening. No matter how much you love guns and think that cops are awesome, you should not want them to have guns on drones. A, because they're hackable, which means they can get hacked and then used in ways you wouldn't want your own police to use. Horrible, horrible things. In fact, guns on drones in our own domestic airspace, for any reason, should not be a common thing, should not be legal, because then they are hackable from wherever by whoever wants to hack them. Duh. And then on top of that, they're then a tool of the oppressor and readily at disposal for, violation of human rights, which happens here in the United States. I hate to shock you, anybody who doesn't realize that, who thinks only other countries have human rights violations. Anyways, I totally didn't really get to cover all as much as I wanted to on the second episode. I'm just really confused and amazed by this headline and by the other stuff we kind of stumbled upon. We didn't get to Christian headlines, topics, Donald Trump, but also their page is really hard to see because they have this little pop-up that demands your email to get your free gift. How to prepare your heart for Easter. As a former Catholic who's studied the history of Christianity in a really intense way that kind of trumps, pardon the awkwardness there, I almost don't want to ever use that word anymore, but that trumps the average Bible-thumping Christian who's only just mindlessly been indoctrinated into repeating certain passages from the Bible. I really have studied the facts about the history in a way, I've forgotten more about the development and nuance of Christianity and its many, many, many flavors. But let me tell you, that Christians should be up in arms about this guns on drones thing. But they're not, because they love guns, because they've been co-opted, and all the three major religions have been hijacked for the purposes of promoting war and profiteering on it, which should be getting explicitly more obvious by now. And that's sort of my point. But we're almost out of time. Thanks for listening. If you want to know what I wanted to touch on about what to do about Trump, find an earlier episode called Trumptopia Agenda. Search those keywords on my show titles, because I think I spoke somewhat eloquently. In any case, as always, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this crazy transcendental, mystic, hippie, new age nut job full of love and peace and grooviness. Thank you for listening. I hope it was thought-provoking. And I beg you, if you're a fan, help grow the fan base, please. Not because I think I'm special, but because I think that we as a community, people who think the same way, well, we're just sort of not really jumping on this historic moment in as hardcore and well-organized of a way as I think we could be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's sort of stuck in a blind corner and not seeing some awesome grassroots work on the meditation side, on the transcendentalism, healing solution. Maybe I'm just not in the right, Facebook groups. I see a lot of love and support being shared in small hubs and a lot of sort of interesting discussion about transcendentalism and enlightenment but I don't see grassroots political activism with it. And I'm totally out of time now, folks, so